Hi guys. Okay, so I'm going to go over numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and we'll see about 12. Okay, so the others, their answers will obviously be on the document on Google Classroom. So I am going to turn on the document camera, and we're going to start with example 5. So the length of a rectangular garden is 4 meters more than its width. The area of the rectangle is 60 meters. Find the dimensions. So we have our rectangle, and the length is 4 meters more than its width. So we don't know the length or the width. So for the width, I'm going to use x. And the length is 4 meters more than the width. So the length would be x plus 4. And the area is 60 meters. So I have to do length times width in order to get the area of my rectangle. So I have x times x plus 4, and the area is 60 meters. So x, I just have to distribute that x in. So I'd get x squared plus 4x equals 60. And then in order to solve my quadratic, I need it to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 60 from both sides. I get x squared plus 4x minus 60 equals 0. And then you can choose to either factor it or use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to choose the quadratic formula. So that means a is 1, b is 4, and c is negative 60. So following my quadratic formula, I get x is equal to negative b, so negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 16, minus 4 times a times c. So 4 times 1 is 4, times negative 60 is 240, and those are two negatives, so plus 240 over 2a, so over 2. So I get x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 256 divided by 2. And I think the square root of 256 is 15, but I'm not sure. Nope, it's 16. So I get negative 4 plus or minus 16 divided by 2. So if I do negative 4 plus 16 divided by 2, that will give me a positive answer. If I do negative 4 minus 16 divided by 2, that's going to give me a negative answer. We're dealing with length, and I don't want a negative answer. So I'm going to use my positive root. So negative 4 plus 16 divided by 2. And then negative 4 plus 16 is 12, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So x is equal to 6. So that means that my width is 6 meters, and my length is 6 plus 4, which is 10. And those are my dimensions of that rectangle, 6 and 10. Okay, number 6. The length of a rectangle is 6 meters less than its width. Find the dimensions of the rectangle if its area is 27 square meters. So Now we have the length of a rectangle is 6 meters less than its width. And we need to find the dimensions if the area is 27 square meters. So if I have my rectangle, I don't know my width, so I'm going to call it X, but I know that my length is 6 meters less than that. So that's X minus 6. And my area is 27 meters. So remember, area is length times width. So I have X times X minus 6, and that equals 27. So if I distribute that X in, I get X squared minus 6X. And I know I'm going to have to move that 27 over in order to solve. So minus 27 equals 0. And now I can solve because my quadratic is set equal to 0. So my A value is 1, my B value is negative 6, and my C value is negative 27. So I can use my quadratic formula. So X is equal to negative B. B is already negative, so it's like negative 1 times negative 6, which is 6, plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared is positive 36, minus 4 times A times C. Since minus 4, that means it's negative 4 times negative 27. I know I'm going to have a positive number. So 4 times 27 is 108, so plus 108 divided by 2a, which is just 2. 108 plus 36 is 144. So I get X is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 144 divided by 2. And I'm going to continue up here. So the square root of 144 is 12. So I get 6 plus or minus 12 divided by 2. And I know that 6 plus 12, that's going to give me my positive root. And I'm working with a rectangle, so I'm working with length or distance. And so I need my positive root. So I have 6 plus 12 divided by 2. 6 plus 12 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. So X is equal to 9. And X represented my length, my width. So this rectangle has a width of 9 meters. And it has a length of 9 minus 6. So it has a length of 3 meters. And that's that one. Okay. So let's look at number 7. So a square is altered, which means changed. So a square is altered so that one dimension is increased by 5 inches and the other dimension is decreased by 2 inches. If the area of the resulting rectangle is 98 square inches, find the area of the original square. Okay, so something you need to know about squares is that all the side lengths are the same. So your original square, your length and your width have to be the same because it's a square. That's what makes it a square. This is what makes it different than a rectangle, right? So I can call one side my width X and my length X because they're the same thing. So it says that one dimension is increased by 5. So either the length or the width is increased by 5. It doesn't tell us which one, so I can pick. And I'm going to create a new rectangle. So my new dimension, X plus 5, because it was increased by 5 inches, and the other dimension is decreased by 2. So X minus 2 is your other dimension. And then it says the area of the resulting rectangle is 98 square inches. So it wants to know the area of the original square. So in order to find the area of the original square, I need to find out what x is. And in order to find out what x is, I need to solve it. So to find my area of the rectangle, I can do x minus 2 times x plus 5, and that has to equal 98 because that's the area. So don't forget, when you're multiplying binomials, you need to follow the FOIL method, right? So first, outer, inner, last. So first, x times x is x squared. Outer, x times 5, so plus 5x. Inner, negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And last, negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. And that equals 98. So I can combine my 5x and negative 2x. So I get x squared plus 3x. And now I know I'm going to have to move my 98 over, right? So I subtract 98, subtract 98. 98, negative 10 minus 98 is negative 108. And now that equals 0. And once it equals 0, I can use my quadratic equation, or you can factor it, and we can solve for x. So I'm going to continue up here. So x is equal to negative b, so negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 9, minus 4 times a times c. So c is a negative, so I know that's going to be plus. So negative 4 times negative 108, so plus 432 over 2 times a, which is 2. So 432 plus 9 is 441. And the square root of 441 is 21. So what we are left with is x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus 21 divided by 2. So when you do negative 3 plus 21 divided by 2, you're going to get a positive root. And when you do negative 3 minus 21, you'll get a negative root. Since I'm dealing with area, I don't want my negative root. So I'm just going to take my positive root there. So I have x is equal to negative 3 plus 21 divided by 2. And I'm going to get 18 divided by 2, which is 9. So that gives you the length and the width of the square. But that's not what the question is asking. So the question is asking for the area of the original square. So if my length is 9 and my width is 9, I have 9 times 9, which is 81. So the area of the original square is 81 inches squared. Okay, so it's important that you read the question to make sure that you're answering the question. All right. So let's look at 8. So some of you probably looked at 8 and said, no thanks, but you can do it. I know you can. So number 8, given the diagram to the left, if the area of the shaded region is 59 square inches, what are the dimensions of the outside rectangle? So you have this rectangle here that's shaded, and just the shaded region is 59 square inches. But inside that shaded region, you have another rectangle that is not shaded. So in order to figure out what the dimensions are of the outside rectangle, we need to figure out what x is. And the only way we can do that is if we take the area of the shaded rectangle and subtract it by the area of the unshaded rectangle, and we solve for x. That's the only way we'll be able to solve that problem. So we have the area of the shaded region is 59 square inches. So I have to do the area of my big rectangle, which is 2x minus 1 times x plus 6. That's going to give me this whole area in here, okay? But the only area they gave us is the shaded region, so 59 square inches. So what I have to do then is I have to subtract from that the area of the smaller rectangle. So minus x times x plus 3, right? Because that's the big rectangle minus the smaller rectangle. And that will give me just the area of the shaded region, which is 59. So now I have to simplify here before I can do anything. So again, we have another FOIL. So first, outer, inner, last. So 2x times x is 2x squared. Outer, 2x times 6, so plus 12x. Inner, negative 1 times x is negative x. And then last, negative 1 times 6 is negative 6. From there, I'm going to subtract my x times x plus 3. So x times x is x squared. And then x times 3 is 3x. And that equals 59. Okay, so now I can continue to simplify. So I have 2x squared, and then 12x minus x is 11x minus 6. Now, don't forget, this subtraction goes to both of the terms inside here. So minus x squared minus 3x equals 59. Almost done. So I have a negative x squared and a 2x squared. So 2x squared minus x squared is x squared. Then I have 11x minus 3x is 8x. And then I'm going to have to move that 59 over. So I would subtract 59 from negative 6, and I get negative 65. And now that equals 0. And now I can solve my quadratic equation. So you know that I love my quadratic formula. So A is 1, B is 8, and C is negative 65. So once I do my quadratic formula, I get x is equal to negative b, so negative 8, plus or minus the square root of 8 squared, which is 64, minus 4 times a times c. Well, negative 4 times negative 65 will give me a positive number. So 4 times 65 is 260. And that's divided by 2a, so divided by 2. So when I simplify that, 260 plus 64 is 324. And the square root of 324 is 18. So I have x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus 18 divided by 2. So again, I'm dealing with dimensions, so I want my positive root. So negative 8 plus 18 is going to give me that positive root. So negative 8 plus 18 is 10, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. So what I'm left with is that x is equal to 5. But let's look at what it's asking. It says, what are the dimensions of the outside rectangle? So if x is 5, then the length of my rectangle is 5 plus 6. So my length is 11 inches. And if I substitute a 5 in here, I get 2 times 5, which is 10, minus 1 is 9. So my width is 9 inches. So this is putting everything that we have done in this unit all together in order to solve a problem. We have our FOIL method here from getting the area of a rectangle. And then we combine like terms. We get everything onto one side so that we can solve the quadratic. And then we solve it, which leads us into answering the question, which is what algebra is all about, using what you know to solve a problem. All right, so let's look at consecutive integers. So I'm going to do 9, 11, and maybe 12. So number 9, the product of two positive consecutive integers is 56. Find the integers. So the product, remember that means multiplication, two positive consecutive integers. So I want my positive root there. Consecutive integers, one right after another. So is 56. So let x be the first integer. And if I want the very next integer after that, I need x plus 1 to be the second integer. So now I have the product, of two positive integers. So that means I'm going to multiply x by x plus 1. And that product is 56. So I get x squared plus x. And then equals 56. But remember, in order to solve my quadratic, I need to get it equal to 0 unless you're going to complete the square, which I don't suggest. You're going to be dealing with fractions. So I would have to move that 56 over. So minus 56. And now that equals 0. And now you can use your quadratic. So a is 1, b is 1, c is negative 56. So x is equal to negative b. So negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared, which is 1, minus 4 times a times c. Negative 4 times negative 56 will give me a positive number. So 4 times 56 is 224 divided by 2 times a, which is 2. So I get x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 225. Is this 15? Yeah, which is 15 divided by 2. So I get negative 1 plus 15 divided by 2 and negative 1 minus 15 divided by 2. Negative 1 plus 15 is 14 divided by 2 is 7. Negative 1 minus 15 is negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. So go back to your question. The product of two positive consecutive integers, negative 8, is not positive. So therefore, one of them is 7. So your first integer is 7, and the second integer is 8. And 7 times 8 is 56. And I'm sure you could have done that without using algebra, but that doesn't matter. And you should use quadratics. So the reason why I'm not going to do number 10 is because it's very similar to example number 1 that we did in our notebooks. So let's look at 11, because this one's a little bit different. It's the same, but a little bit different. So two positive consecutive odd integers such that the square of the first added to 3 times the second is 24. All right. So 2 positive consecutive odd integers such that the square of the first added to 3 times the second is 24. So we're going to let x be the first, and then it's consecutive odd integers. So let x plus 2 be your second integer. Okay? So, such that the square of the first, so x squared, added to 3 times the second is 24. Okay? So then I can distribute my 3. So I get x squared plus 3x plus 6 equals 24. And then remember, I'm going to move that 24 over so that it's equal to 0. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 18, because 6 minus 24 is negative 18, equals 0. And now you can use your quadratic formula. You can factor it. You could have completed the square. So a is 1, b is 3, c is negative 18. So x is equal to negative b. So negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared, which is 9, minus 4 times a times c. So I know negative 4 times negative 18 will give me a positive number. So plus 72 divided by 2. So I have x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 81 divided by 2. The square root of 81 is 9. So I have negative 3 plus or minus 9 divided by 2. So 2 positive consecutive odd integers. So I need my positive roots. So negative 3 plus 9 divided by 2 is going to give me my positive root, right? So negative 3 plus 9 is 6, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my first integer is 3, and then 3 plus 2 is 5, which is my second integer. Okay, so hopefully that made sense, or it helped a little bit if you were struggling with some of those practice problems. So if you still have questions or it doesn't make sense to you, make sure you reach out to me, and good luck on your edge elastic. All right, bye guys, miss you. Please don't score poorly on your edge elastic and then tell me you don't get it. Make sure you ask questions first. Okay.